We moved house recently, and when I was clearing out, I found this in storage from when I first started doing Reconnective Healing, when I was first qualified as a practitioner. Reconnective Healing, a return to an optimal state of balance. The other phrase that was used in the beginning was a return to wholeness, which is a bit simpler, and I prefer that actually. But you can see that it has the image of the hands, the Michelangelo painting with God reaching out to make connection with humanity, and so it's a biblical template, certainly a biblical image that was used in that in Eric Pearl's branding at the beginning. And we've got the reconnection here. We've got Jill Brennan, Reconnective Healing practitioner. I used to go to fairs and things like that, so I'd take this with me and stick it in front of me and try to talk to people about this healing approach, this new, not really a modality, but it's just a different way of speaking about healing. Let's reconnect. So today we're going to continue that theme, that biblical theme, as we talk about a return to wholeness. We could replace the word wholeness for Eden, a return to Eden, if we use that mythological template that we have in the Genesis account. Now, when I speak about myth, I just want to be clear that I'm not using it in its usual colloquial parlance, where it's for something that's not true. We talk about myth busting or 5 myths about this, and then you get videos telling you these things that you thought were true aren't really true. Don't mean it in that way. So myth is a literary term. It's a genre for any pieces of writing, any texts that tell the story of the gods. And by that definition, the Bible is a book about the gods, and the Genesis account is a myth, and that's the meaning by which I'm going to be talking about it. Whether or not it actually happened is kind of irrelevant. It's the wrong question to be asking. It's what it might teach us, what clues it might give us about truth and reality. Remember, we're always having to approach the metaphysical world, the bigger realm. There's so much more that we can't understand because as incarnated souls, with the limitations of the body and the 5 senses that are part of the package of signing up for incarnation. So we can only access information via the filter of our minds. So story is the best way to do it. Now, you might be familiar with the story of the Garden of Eden, and you might think that this refers to the whole earth, that this is a story saying the earth was, a place where there was wholeness and where everything was good until Adam and Eve were disobedient, and then it all went wrong, and that's the fall. If you look closely at the text and analyse it, you see that Eden didn't refer to the whole of the earth, because it talks about it being a garden. And a garden was a place that very few people, ordinary people, would have access to. In the Middle East, it would be there'd be a lot of dry desert, barren land. And it was hard to make a living. It took all of your effort to make sure that you had enough water for yourself and for your animals to be alive the next day. So a well-watered garden is something you wouldn't have experience of. You could only dream about. Something that rich people had, princes had. And so this was something that would ordinarily be out of your reach. So the talk of a garden being how it was originally, and that was a garden that God inhabited with people, is really quite important. Because the other thing to realise is that for the ancient people, and I'm not just talking about the Israelites, I'll come back to that in a moment, gods were remote. Gods were out of reach. They lived either in gardens and therefore were out of reach for the reasons I've explained, or they lived on mountaintops. And they too were out of reach. People would see mountains, but there is no way that they would ever walk to the top of a mountain. They just didn't have the equipment to do that. So there was a sort of mystery about mountains, and it was seen, they were believed to be the place where the gods lived. So there was always the conception of gods being different to humans and just being separated by an elevated status. Now, I mentioned that it wasn't just the Israelites that thought this. These thoughts were common throughout the ancient civilizations, Egypt, Mesopotamia, Babylonia. And in fact, the idea of El was something that wasn't exclusive to the Israelites. So in, I believe, 1928, something like that, they found these clay tablets at a place called Ugarit, Ugharit, I think. And that was a place in Syria. I can't remember what region of Syria, but it was close to where the Israelites would have lived regionally, in terms of, the global geography. Okay, it was in that area. And when they uncovered these tablets, they were able to see that inscribed on them was a language that seemed to be like Hebrew, but it wasn't Hebrew. It was quite close to it, similar. And they called it the Ugarit alphabet. But as they read the stories on these tablets, they discovered that there was this god of the Ugarites known as El. And El had a co-creator, like another god working with him, called Baal. So this would make sense of why in the Bible we hear a lot about the Israelites having problems or contests with Baal, and Baal worship being something that they were familiar with. That was also happening in that region. Okay, now El and Baal, they had a council, a divine council of gods who worked for them, if you liked, in the heavenly realms. So again, this is quite similar to what we are seeing in the Bible through passages like Psalm 82 of Yahweh having his council of Elohim, who are also El. They're plural gods, but they are different to Yahweh in that they serve Yahweh, and they're not the sovereign creator exclusively in the way that Yahweh is. Yahweh has exclusive qualities such as omniscience, omnipotence, and so on. I'm saying all of this as a result of analysis of the texts, okay, a very scholarly approach to this. Now, rather than read you long passages from this book, which wouldn't make a very good video, I'm going to summarise. Okay, so these are some points that we can make about the divine council. First thing to say is God has a divine family or a heavenly assembly or council. So those different terms are used in different places of the Bible, but it's definitely there. If we were to say, how do we define Elohim, then it has to be that it's a place of residence. It's to do with people who are in the sky, who inhabit the sky or the unseen realm, unseen to us, the spiritual realm or realms. Okay, I'm just leaving that open for now, but as distinct from the physical realm, heaven as opposed to earth. Okay, Yahweh is the creator and sovereign master of these other Elohim, but God also has a human family and administration. Somebody said, "Oh, don't tell me there's bureaucracy in heaven." There isn't paperwork and bureaucracy in the way that we know it, obviously, but this is a positive. This means there is organisation, that there is an intelligence that is holding everything together. There is a network, and this network of God's counsel is working to fulfill God's purpose. And God's purpose is to restore Eden, as I say, we're going to come back to Eden and what we mean by Eden in a moment. And the function and status of the human family, if we were analysing what the Bible is actually saying, is to mirror the divine family and the administration of the divine family. So in other words, as above, so below. Okay, God works his purposes out through the heavenly host, the divine council, and also through the human family. And this is steering us towards an understanding that the Bible not only allows or condones, but it depends upon the co-working of heaven and earth, or the angels, the guides, and human beings. Okay, the two families working together, cooperating. Just as with members of the divine council who represent God in what they are tasked to do, so humans are God's imaging representatives. And that imaging representatives, that's a word that Heiser uses, is by virtue of having the image of God. We have the image of God in the same way that the guides and helpers and sons of God have the image of God. And I think that that's overlooked. That's something that I never really thought about, that we're actually, our destiny, according to the Bible, is, as human beings, is to rule with the divine council. It's to share in the ruling of the world, of the earth, of the creation. So heaven and earth are separate but connected realms. And in the Genesis story, it talks about, the creation, what happens first and in order in the days. Then it speaks about there being this dome over the earth of waters. And then the sky separating the heavens and the earth. And the sky is the realm of the air. And sometimes in the Bible it talks about these, the Elohim being like the creatures of the air. All right, or belonging to the air, and it's talking about the astral realm. So it's a sort of maybe a place of communication, or it also speaks about we'll meet in the air as well at one day, but doesn't it? About the ultimate, the resurrection of the dead and meeting in the air. So the astral is a place where perhaps the veil is thinned, and there can be this interchange and communication between those who are in the heavens as opposed to those on the earth. Okay, so we're working together, and this communication is encouraged. It's interesting because I put a little note to myself here about the dark arts, and that saying, as above, so below, this definitely is there in the esoteric teachings. So what differentiates that from being in the family of light? When does it become dark? The principles are the same, but if you are thinking you're going to somehow manipulate this for your own ends, then that's when it becomes dark, because you are playing with fire. And I think this is why a lot of the time the church does sort of warn you against any of this. So all of this that I'm saying, even though it's in the Bible, we don't hear about it because it's seen as, it's New Age, or it's occult. Just, you don't need to know that. Well, we can know that. We can know about this. We need to know it and understand it properly and educate ourselves. Because if we realise that we're working in tandem, then we're all working for the same end. And that same end and higher purpose is the restoration, the returning home to Eden, to the place of wholeness, to the place of healing. It's reversing the fall. It's reversing the bad energy and karma that all came in as a result of the choice for the rebellion by both in the heavens and on earth. I'm just thinking of, there's like Aleister Crowley, isn't there, who knew all of this stuff, had all this esoteric knowledge, this Gnostic understanding. And then, I'm just getting the image of somebody who places themselves in like a place of sovereignty where they're wanting to manipulate it all, where they use incarnations or call in the angels or even curse. So they're wanting to orchestrate the outcome, maybe to their own selfish ends. And it's not that it doesn't work, it can work and does work, but you're messing with stuff that has ripples all the way through the whole, and it, everything is connected. So it's egoistic, and that's exactly the same. It's just coming to me. That's exactly the same as the choices that the angels made to serve self rather than to serve the whole. I see. And so this glorifying, the Bible often uses this term glorifying God, and it means glorifying God's purpose. And so we're called to be, if we're in the family of light, and if we're going to be working with our heavenly family of light, we're called to be reflectors of the light or of the glory rather than absorbers of the glory of the light. Yeah? And so, people who want to put themselves on a pedestal, who want the power for themselves, who want status, success, recognition, who want, have people following them. They just want power. Then they're absorbing the glory rather than reflecting it. As I just said, both households experience rebellion in the biblical narrative, and the result is the commencement of a longer war against God's original intention. I'll talk more about God's original intention in a moment. The good news is that there is an equally committed effort on God's part to preserve what he began. Okay. I said I'd talk more about God's intention. So what you have that's quite different in the biblical story is that the garden that is the dwelling of gods, normally in the ancient world, is actually where he placed Adam and Eve. And he walked in the garden with them in the story. So this is a desire on the part of God, Yahweh, to have close relationship, to have intimacy with people, not wanting to be kept remote and distant, as was the case in many ancient religions. And we miss that if we approach the Bible from our modern perspective. And most of the theology that I did, all of the theology I did was post-Reformation theologians. And then you have all these, very complex and developed atonement theories that are so far removed from the original story which was there, which is that God wants to enjoy his family, intimacy with human beings. And that when that was lost through free will and choice, all of these are big themes, I know. There's lots of questions about all of these, and we can come on to all of these in other videos. But the main point is that when that connection was broken through choices of rebellion, because we are taking ourselves out of the intimacy with God, and that's not God saying you're punished, it's to do with vibration, it's to do with the selfishness loses the vision of the whole and takes you to a place of a lower vibrational energy or viewpoint, and a very material worldview where you forget that you're part of something bigger and you're cutting yourself off from that connection, from that earlier connection that we looked at. This connection, you see, it's lost because you're saying, well, I want it my way, and I don't really like your plan, because in your plan I'm just one among many people working towards the light and the higher intention, whereas actually this is quite powerful stuff. I could really use some of this for myself. I could engineer this to be in my benefit and to give me advantage over others, over my realm, over my society, over my culture, over my family. And then you get, the story of Esau and Cain and Abel, and then Esau and Jacob, and it all unfolds. So these are There are these types that are patterns that are there in human nature that we see repeating even today. And we can trace them all back to this story. Do you begin to see how I'm saying it's irrelevant whether or not this actually happened? It just gives us insight into understanding the human condition and the way out of the problems we've created for ourselves as a collective, and the way home to wholeness, home to Eden. So what I'd like to really leave you with today is this thought of intimacy with God, the divine, in Eden. And thinking about what Eden meant to the original readers of Scripture, those who heard the stories. It meant that you are invited into a place of abundance, wholeness, privilege, what they would perceive as privilege. It's yours. And you can step into this experience of complete fulfillment, prosperity, abundance, well-being and wholeness. And we can do it using our imaginations, using that template of a garden. So you might say, I'm not very good at using my imagination. I'm not going to lead you in a visualization as such, but I am going to suggest that you look at some images. And you'll know what I mean by this if you're on Pinterest, or if you do Instagram. You sometimes see these beautiful, like little short videos, maybe just a few seconds long, with lovely music attached to them. And it might be a drone shot or whatever, but it's just a beautiful place on Earth. It's a real place, but not the place that you and I perhaps see in our normal everyday life. And the colours and the images, the water, the gardens, the waterfalls, the view, the vistas are just exhilarating. They lift you to a higher place vibrationally, just looking at them, and bring you joy, and remind you perhaps a little bit of heaven, a little bit of heaven on earth, which is what Eden essentially was and is. So look at some of those images and then hold the idea in your mind, maybe perhaps use it as a template on which to overlay your meditation, and invite the divine council, your team, to meet you in that place, and they will. I found this with my own team. I use my imagination as a tool for helping to build that connection, that communication, that communion. And that's what God wants us to do. This is part of God's plan. So for me, it took a long time for me letting go of some of the conditioning I'd had that told me you shouldn't be doing that. It's New Age, or it's the occult, or whatever. No, it's not. It's biblical. So create a space and know that they will inhabit it. Because there'll be a little part of you that says, oh, it's just my imagination. Well, yes, it is. You've seen a picture. You like the idea of that picture or image. So you're going to close your eyes and imagine yourself into it and recreate it in your mind. But that's okay, because this is the astral that you're entering, like the place of dreams, where the images that appear in your mind. It's just the filter of your perception as a human being. And they'll meet you where you're at. They'll walk with you in the garden, just as Yahweh walked in the garden with Adam and Eve. And you might find a place in that garden where there's somewhere to sit and just feel content, enjoying the sense of presence with the divine council, with your team. And they may come to you one at a time. They may come to you as a group. Remember, the Elohim can be a range of people. There's a video I've made on this, look back. It could be people that you love who have died. Your mother, your father, your grandparents, a close friend who's died, your husband or wife. It can be the angels. Okay, the Elohim is a broad group. It's the people who inhabit the spiritual realm, and they will meet you in the garden and talk with you. And you can commune with them and learn from them, be encouraged, be inspired. This is how the information is shared with us. And for me, I'm making wonderful connections between what my work is as a reconnective healing practitioner and the biblical teaching. Because reconnective healing is energy, light, and information. There is a network, a grid of information that we can access by cooperatively working with the divine council. And when you start to have this supernatural worldview and think in this way, it gives your life meaning and purpose. You're not on your own anymore. And it helps even with how you'll deal with your problems. You'll see them in a different way. And I've got more I could tell you about this. I'm going to keep it for the next video. Maybe that's a little hook and tease. But there was something I did intend to talk about. I don't want this video to be too long. I don't want to cram too much in it. So maybe next time I'll tell you about what has happened only this week while I have been using this method that I've been telling you about, meeting them in the garden, bringing the problems, talking to the council, saying, you're not in this alone, I can talk to you about it. And what happens when you do that, and how patterns are released and things change. Let me know in the comments what you think about all of this, what you make of it all, if you've done this before, if you're going to try it, and if you do try it, how you get on. I'd love to hear. I'll speak to you again very soon. Take care. God bless. Bye for now.